Hello, we're about to start a live show here. My name's Michael Weehar. I'm here from Swarthmore College, broadcasting from WSRN 91.5 FM. Our phone number is 610-690-5700. Please feel welcome to give us a call during this show. So we have a special guest here tonight. His name's Brian Adams, Brian Adams. He's a musician, and he's been making music for a very long time. We're really excited to have him as our guest. So without further ado, Brian, how are you doing this evening?
And good, man. I'm in Manhattan. So just kind of like that's my headquarters right now. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, just like yourself. So I'm excited to have a little conversation and help the station out.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I apologize. We cut you off for a second there, but we got the bulk of that. You're from Pittsburgh. We're excited to have you. And I'm just going to jump right into some questions. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, when did you start making music?
So I would say probably 8th grade is really when I started. Obviously, I've been in music my whole life. Like I've, messed around with some instruments, and I played drums when I was younger and whatnot. But I would say it's maybe, I don't want to say seriously, but more formally, I started music in 8th grade, and actually it started when I had a detention, believe it or not, which is, obviously not your proudest moment, but I had a really cool history teacher named Mrs. King, and she had a computer in the back of her room that, I was allowed to use it during the detention. So I just kind of was like leafing around, and I saw a program called Magix Music Maker, which I'm not even sure it still exists. It's Magix is the spelling. So really, I would probably, if I could point my finger on it, would say that was the first time that I like actually was in a software mixing and making music. So obviously, I don't want to share that sound clip because it was probably terrible, but that was the beginning of it all. So,
well, thank you so much. That's funny. I didn't know that you started back in detention, and from there, I know your interest grew, and you've been continuing with making music. So the next question I have here, I wanted to ask you is, what artists have influenced you and have influenced your music making?
Definitely the techno era in Europe. Right when I started out music, I was very involved and I was listening to a lot of that type of music. I know it's not like the most popular stuff now, but EDM it's gotten more popular, I would say, overall as a category. But techno specifically as a genre was the style that I really started out with, like the ticka-day, like if you like Sandstorm and Darude, and I know a lot of people are familiar with that. So from our generation at least, but that's really where it started. So like DJ Manian, Darude, Bass Hunter, a lot of those artists that made techno, and whether it was techno that had vocals associated, or if it was, I also listened to just straight instrumentals. So that was my starting block, and I probably it wasn't a bad thing to start with because of the simplicity of those songs. Like they tend to be repetitive. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just it helped me kind of like get my footing, just to kind of like copy and paste certain clips and just keep it running throughout the song and stuff, and slowly add layers to the beat. So I would definitely say like techno era, DJ Manian. I listened to a lot of that, and along with there's a lot of DJs really, but that was the origin of it all, I would say.
Well, that's really great to hear because I'm actually about to play one of your songs, and this song has some elements of techno and has some vocals as well. So you perform vocals as well, and we're gonna start playing that, and we'll come back to some more questions afterwards.
Sounds good.
I got to do to get you back to the way you were. Sometimes it feels like you only change for the worse, and I'm not waiting on an answer. Already past the present into the future. So look around, understand that this is it. No more anything, 'cause honestly I'm sick of it. Your world is all fading away. Listen to the words that I gotta say. And the beat goes on and on again, but you're still long gone, my friend. And the beat goes on, wishing you to come home. And the beat goes on and on again, but you're still long gone, my friend. And the beat goes on, wishing you to come home. Get down to the rhythm of the streets and pump my sounds. It's a shame you're not around. We used to kick it uptown, but every day that I sit back, relax, stay up in the nighttime, write tracks, gotta put the mic down and get back to being in places you're not at. Ever since you turned your back against us, the door's shut. Where's the youth blown up a cliff? No re-entry, already on the way. It's all I know. It's all I know. On and on again, but you're still long gone, my friend. And the beat goes on, wishing you to come home. And the beat goes on and on again, but you're still long gone, my friend. And the beat goes on, wishing you to come home. And the beat goes on and on again, but you're still long gone, my friend. And the beat goes on, wishing you to come home, wishing you to come home. And the beat goes on and on again, but you're still long gone, my friend. And the beat goes on, wishing you to come home, wishing you to come home. Tell me what I got to do to get you back to the way you were. 'Cause sometimes it feels like you only change for the worse, and I'm not waiting on an answer. Already past the present into the future. So look around, understand that this is it. No more anything, 'cause honestly I'm sick of it. Your world is all fading away. Listen to the words that I gotta say.
So that was really awesome, Brian. Your song, The Beat Goes On. It's a classic to me because I've been listening to it for years. I really love it. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that.
So I just wanted to give the viewers, the listeners out there, a taste of your music. And I was hoping we could come back to some of the questions. And as we keep going on, we're going to have a few more songs of yours we play, and we'll ask you as we go along a few questions that might come up about what might have influenced you or what you might have been doing there. But
Okay.
So the next thing I was going to ask you is what people in your life have most influenced your music? Are there family members? Are there friends? Are there teachers? Where do your sources of inspiration come from in your personal life?
So I would definitely say I know I mentioned I kind of took music more seriously in 8th grade when I actually like had my own software and whatnot. But Really going back all the way to like third or fourth grade. My sister, Elise, she's 4 years older than me. So she was already like taking violin lessons, and she was like enrolled in like kind of string lessons in elementary school and middle school. She took that all the way through high school into orchestra at Mount Lebanon. So she probably was the first person that, was musically inclined, that kind of had an influence on me, I would say. And I've used, when I started music and I took it more seriously, at least from a violin sense, that's sort of the first person I would say in my life that definitely influenced me to kind of just kind of experiment at, more or less, because I want to say around third or fourth grade in elementary school, you had the choice to do band or a stringed instrument like a violin, cello, whatnot. So that's what I really started out on. So I could, there's kind of two answers to that first question you mentioned. Like I technically started, with the violin, but really the electronic stuff is when I kind of really took it more serious. But she would be the first contact, like my relative, I guess. And after that, Mr. Vogel in high school was my orchestra teacher. So he definitely was a major influence, because Mount Lebanon Orchestra is pretty highly rated, and like it's very professional the way that like business is handled, and not business, but like the way that that things are conducted, so to speak. So it's not like you just join the orchestra and just slack off. Like things are very serious, and you really have to put in your best effort. And if you're not playing right, everybody can kind of hear it. So I would say Mr. Vogel and my sister definitely are major influences. And then I would say from an electronic sense, I think definitely some of my friends, even like definitely you, Mike, in some ways, because I know we listen to a lot of electronic music growing up, and that kind of happens organically in a sense too, where your friend plays a song you never heard about, and suddenly you're kind of like checking that when you get home, and like there's things that just kind of happen accidentally as well in music. I would say more on the electric side, electronically speaking, is where that took place a little bit more so. But I would say it's kind of a blend between the orchestra and just kind of listening to electronic music, EDM, all that stuff growing up. And I know like when we were growing up, I was born in 91. So in the early 2000s, there was a lot of like pop music, and there was a lot of experimentation going on with, getting away from maybe that rock band type of vibe, and a little bit more into the computer stuff. So I kind of just grew up in a culture too. Like the cultural influence as well is something that definitely impacts you more than you realize. Like if you're in an environment where there's just stuff being played, that's a certain genre or something like that, you can't help but kind of have that like influence your music. So
Well, I mean, I think that's really awesome. You basically mentioned all of those. Your sister, one of your band instructors or educators, and your friends. I mean, so that's
right.
really amazing.
And I gotta throw a shout out to my parents too. Obviously, if your parents are telling you your music's whack and you should just change and like go to something else, you're definitely gonna be influenced to do that. So my parents have always been super supportive and everything like that, and all my relatives really. So I just gotta throw that in there. So.
Well, I'm just gonna do a quick recap. Again, my name's Michael Wehar, here at Swarthmore College, broadcasting on WSRN 91.5 FM. Our phone number is 610-690-5700. And we're live here on the air with Brian Adams, who's a musician, a talented music producer as well. And we're just really excited to have him. He's telling us about some of the influences he's had, and this is really meaningful. So I want to go to the next question. You mentioned doing band growing up.
Orchestra, rather.
My mistake.
Yeah.
Orchestra.
No problem.
So nowadays, though, do you prefer making music alone, or do you prefer making music with others?
Um, I would say that it's kind of a blend, like it's kind of a mix. Um, I think if you go one extreme too much, you kind of get burned out of it a little bit. So like to give you an example, like if I made a whole album or something like just by myself sitting in my room, nobody else, that just gets very stale. Like, and it's just kind of like, it's hard to gather inspiration when you're just like kind of cooped up like that, so to speak. And not to say that you don't go walk around and get inspiration and certain things like that, and you come back by yourself and make an album or something like that. But I would say definitely the experience of collaboration is very unique, and you can have a lot of special moments in that. And you get it, and you don't just gain music from that, you gain friendships. And you really can, like, when you're kind of, the reason I really like collaboration as well is because um you are kind of like held accountable more so. Like when you're by yourself, there's nobody really saying like, let's get this done, let's push this out, blah blah blah. But when somebody's like an artist and I'm recording them, I feel like I really have to just step my game to the next level, because you only get maybe like one weekend or something to record an artist, and then they might leave town or something. And before you know it, like all you have is those recordings. So you got to make sure that those recordings are really locked in and good. And I think you have to have the collaboration piece to kind of like take yourself to another level. Like, and not to say that I'm at like, top of a mountain here or anything like that, but it's just, that's what I've found at least. And I think it's definitely a lot more fun to collaborate. Cause it feels more like you're just kind of like having like a party and like throwing in some music while you're at it. So to speak. Like, I know people talk about recording studios, and even recording studios, the way they're designed is sort of like friendly for collaborators. Like they welcome guests if the artist is okay with it into the studio. They'll have like lights kind of flashing around and stuff. So I think music really is meant to be like shared. So I would say I tend to lean more on the collaboration angle, but there's also like a fine line, because if you just constantly collaborating, you don't really get that alone time you need to just crank out like mixing. Because mixing to me is like, if since I produce and I make and I record and I kind of do everything all in one, I have to have that dedicated time to just mix myself and just really rely on my ears with the speakers to get stuff done. So you have to have that like period where you're just kind of like blown through a mix. But yeah, I think it's like a balancing act. Probably is the best answer to it. I don't think you can really go all one direction and kind of get everything you want accomplished. So,
well, what I took from that is, as you said, it's a balance. And another thing though is you're really passionate. You're an artist, and
right.
you need time on your own to really bring out your style and really kind of perfect your songs. And
Right.
and that's really important. But it's also, you want additional influences to come in and help you improve and to challenge you and to help make your music better. So I can see how it's a balance there. So that leads me to this next question. If you could collaborate with any artist out there, they could be active, they might no longer be an active musician. Who would it be?
Um, it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm kind of like dipping into a different genre a little bit lately. Like, I know, like I grew up on another influence I could probably throw out that I didn't throw out earlier, because I was kind of mentioning what I just started with was techno, but I really do like punk rock a lot. So I know this is kind of out in left field a little bit, but Tom DeLonge from Blink 182, I would definitely, because he has a very unique voice, and it's something that I've never done before. Like a punk rock song, like I can sort of figure out how to mix guitars together and stuff like that, but it would be a stretch for me. But it's something I really want to get into a little bit more, because I was even the other day thinking about maybe like buying an electric guitar and like going the whole 9 yards. And then it's like, I'm like, hold up, maybe I shouldn't do that. Like I might have just been like biting off more than I could chew. But I think Tom DeLonge, like that would be a really interesting collab. I don't know where it would go. I can't tell you if it'd be any good. If me mixing him would translate. I'm sure. I mean, he's very talented, obviously, but I don't know what my mix would yield. But that's definitely one. And then I probably would say like other artists, like, I mean, Justin Bieber, I mean, that's another influence that I actually grew up on. I don't think anybody can say that they weren't slightly influenced by Justin Bieber, because he started out extremely young on YouTube, and like he did it like very organically. Like he was just doing videos on YouTube, and you know, before you know it's like Usher heard it and like suddenly he's signed. So it's a cool story nonetheless. So I'd probably throw those two out there as like definitely like artists that I would want to kind of collaborate with. One like Justin Bieber is more in my alley in terms of like pop music, and then one's kind of a stretch, like punk rock for sure.
Well,
So
that's actually perfect for the next thing I'm about to do. I'm about to play another one of your songs. This one's called Roller Coaster. And I don't know about you, but I feel like there's some alternative rock influences, maybe not punk rock,
yep.
but yeah, so I'm excited to play that here on the air. So we're going to get that started in just a moment.
Cool.
And I don't know where we're going. We always confusing ourselves. Someday maybe we'll figure it out, 'cause I don't want nobody else. And I don't know where we're going. We always confusing ourselves. Someday maybe we'll figure it out, 'cause I don't want nobody else. Don't worry about a thing in the end. We are one and the same. Riding this coaster, not that far on the stretch. I've been waiting for forever now. Worry about a thing in the end. We are one and the same. Riding this coaster, not that far home stretch. I've been waiting for forever now. I can never give it up, I'm always holding on. I can never give it up, I'm always holding on. Can't keep looking around forever, 'cause you know you need something more. When you find the one, you tell yourself that it's better to wait and buy your time. Don't worry about a thing in the end. We are one and the same. Riding this coaster, not that far home stretch. I've been waiting for forever now. Worry about a thing in the end. We are one and the same. Riding this coaster, not that far home stretch. I've been waiting for forever
That was great. That was one of my favorite songs by you, Brian. I know that's still.
Like,
You're welcome, but I know that's still not one of your most recent songs. That's still maybe at least 6 years ago, maybe longer. But I just want to, for anyone who's tuning in, I want to recap. My name's Michael Wehar. This is Swarthmore College. We're WSRN 91.5 FM. Our phone number is 610-690-5700. We have a special guest here tonight, Mr. Brian Adams. He's a musician, he's a songwriter, he's a vocalist, he's a music producer. If you have any questions for Brian, again, this is Brian Adams. Feel free to give us a call. But while we're waiting for any questions, I have a few more here. So we've listened to two of your songs now here on the air. I wanted to ask you, how would you describe your music in terms of what's your style, or maybe what are some of your styles or themes that you've had?
I would say there's definitely usually an underlying EDM element to it. So if you're looking for something that's like a common denominator in at least most of my songs, there's some element, that's synthesized, or, that has drum beats and that are kind of, like electronic. So that's kind of like the underlying theme, I would say, in my music. But then what I try to do is, depending on what mood I'm in, I kind of try to switch it up. So in that last song we were just listening to, that was a little bit more of a stab at like alternative, like you mentioned. So that I kind of tried to like blend that with the, with the EDM elements I referred to earlier. And I do that multiple times. So like even with reggaeton, I have a friend in Miami that I've been flying down periodically to kind of mesh reggaeton with EDMs. So, I mean, I know there's some examples of that, like with Talkie Talkie with DJ Snake, and there's certain examples that are kind of getting out there, and it's helping kind of promote, other cultures, which is cool, like the Spanish culture and reggaeton, and really like the whole Latin music scene. So that I would say, you can always kind of depend on some electronic element, and then it just depending on what I'm kind of in the mood for, like alternative, whether it's reggaeton, whether it's just regular pop, like I try to like fuse it with something else. And I know earlier I mentioned Tom DeLonge would be a good collab, like something I would like really want to get involved with. And that would probably be more of a stretch where I'd probably get away from the EDM a little bit more and go more heavy on the punk rock and stuff like that. But I always bring it back to center a little bit, because that's my background. Like I was, I kind of started out on EDM and stuff like that, and I think that's kind of where the world's heading a little bit, anyways. Even country music nowadays has, some synthesized drum beats, and for better or for worse, I don't want to. I try to bring in natural elements, because I know like some of my favorite music is actually from the 60s and 70s. Like I'm a huge Who fan. The Beatles and like other artists like that. So I don't want to totally lose that organic, natural feel, like Michael Jackson as well, as an example. So it's just kind of like a fusion, I would say.
Well, thank you very much for sharing about how you view your music. I feel like you're very versatile, and I've seen a lot of different elements over time that you've developed, and I really do feel there's a certain element with your piano melodies that's really unique to you, and even song composition. But I'm not the expert, so I want to ask you a few more questions.
Sure.
So, what is your process for making music? I know we talked a little bit about collaborations,
Right.
but I want to also include here, what programs do you use, or how does technology play a role there, or instruments, how do they play a role? So anything you could say about the process in a kind of general way, or even into a technical way would be great to hear about.
Sure. So the second question about like what programs do I use? I'll start there. And so after I mentioned earlier that the first program I actually like saw and actually messed like kind of tweaked and interacted with was Magic's Music Maker rather. But the year to follow, I started out in FL Studio, like a lot of young artists. It was very cheap and inexpensive, and I think the following Christmas after I started with Magic's is when my mom got me the producer version of FL Studio, which that's when that unlocks the ability to save files. So before that, I was just kind of experimenting, and then I'd leave the computer off and turn it off, and everything would be lost. It was just more of like a total experiment. But FL Studio was the first program I took serious. I still use it at times. There's these very interesting nuances where unless you're producing, you would never pick this up. But for some reason, FL Studio tends to have, like when you put a drum beat in the software, it tends to give you a fuller sound. So it's very hard to explain, but so that I like using FL for drums at this point. And I kind of export the drums specifically for that reason. But then I moved on. I looked at Reason, and when I was in high school, I had a music education course, and they used Reason predominantly. But I wasn't a huge fan of it. It's okay for. Sorry, are you still there?
Brian, this is really great, and we actually have a caller. Hold on just a moment. So we have a question here from a caller, and they asked, where have you performed your music? Have you performed at all, or are you more in the background? Are you in the background of producing these songs?
So the electronic music, so the short answer for the electronic music is I really have not taken that very public. I've performed in college. I had a buddy, Devin Kelly and Chris Conway. So Devin played guitar. It was a very interesting combination. Devin played guitar. Sorry, should I go on? Okay, sorry, I didn't know. Okay, so in college, I performed I was like on the street basically with my violin, and with Devin Kelly, who was a guitarist, and Chris Conway, who played the trombone. Obviously, that's a very strange combination. So, but that was like my first experience of like you'd have college kids walking down at night and they'd hear you playing on the sidewalk and stuff like that. So that is like probably my first experience, I would say. And then I did join a band in college that was like sort of like a bluegrass / alternative rock band. And that lasted maybe like a year or two. But honestly, like my next goal is really to take the electronic elements and really what's my bread and butter, and potentially go to open mics and play there, or get like a DJ set or something like that. So really haven't gotten out and done major sets or anything like that. But I mean, I'm in the right city for it, New York City. So I've really focused a lot of my efforts on perfecting the production angle, because it takes a really long time to really nail down exactly like the mixing and mastering process. It's literally like engineering and art combined into one. So it uses like your entire left and right brain. So it's very intensive. So, I mean, I've worked on predominantly, but I think now, I'm at a point where I should probably start pushing it out to Spotify and certain platforms and whatnot. So hopefully that answers the question for the most part.
Well, that was really great how we had a question from one of our callers. And the callers also went on to say, you couldn't hear over the air, they want to come and hear you perform at some point, someday. Cool. So we have one more question for this evening, and then we're going to play a song, and then we're going to wrap it up. Okay. So my last question here, and actually the way I think we're going to do this, I'm going to ask the question, we'll play the song, and then you can answer after, so you have some time to think about it. So the question is, does making music bring you joy and happiness? All right, so that's the question, and
Got it.
I think I have the perfect song by Brian here to play while we're thinking about that.
I'll go ahead and ponder.
And I don't know where we're going. We always confusing ourselves. Someday maybe we'll figure it out. 'Cause I don't want nobody else. And I don't know where we're going. We always confusing ourselves. Someday maybe we'll figure it out. 'Cause I don't want nobody else. Don't worry about a thing in the end. We are one and the same. Riding this coaster, not that far home stretch. I've been waiting for forever, waiting for forever now. Worry about a thing in the end. We are one and the same. Riding this coaster, not that far home stretch. I've been waiting for forever, waiting for forever now.
So I actually made a mistake there. I'm sorry about that. I replayed my favorite song by Brian. But we're
What's
gonna.
wrong with that, Mike?
Well, we already heard it earlier tonight, so in case you're just tuning in, you got to hear it again for a second. So the song I meant to play, it's going to come on right now, and hopefully it'll help us all ponder: does music making bring joy and happiness? So let's try this again here.
I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
All right, so that was Moving Day by Brian Adams. Again, this is Michael Wehar here at Swarthmore College, broadcasting from WSRN 91.5 FM. Our phone number is 610-690-5700. And we're just about to wrap up the show where we have a special guest, Brian Adams, Brian. Brian is a music maker, a music producer, a musician in all forms of the word. So we asked this question, does making music bring you joy and happiness? So I want to hear, Brian, as we start to wrap this up, what do you think about that?
Sure, Mike. So I would say the short answer to that is yes. And here's the long answer. So I kind of view music like a party. And it's only brings you happiness when you're having fun doing it, which, you know, it sounds very like cliche and whatnot, but it's similarly to parties. You don't have a party like every single day of your life. Like there's days where you're just not feeling it and stuff. And you know, you have a hangover or whatnot, but that's kind of how I view it. So I catch inspiration in waves. So it's not like every day I'm going to be like super happy to be making music. And there is some frustration involved and whatnot along with it. But I think when you start forcing it, that's when, and that's when you lose the happiness out of it. Not saying that happens all the time. It's just that, you know, what I try to do is like catch a vibe or like, you know, a wave of inspiration. And that kind of like, it kind of propels you into making it. And that's when it's the most fun. And like I mentioned earlier about collaborations, you're sort of forced to have fun. Like I try to set up collaborations, like first we have the party and then we just make the music. So like, because if you go in just constantly thinking if your primary thoughts just like, we need to make the song, and you treat it like it's a chore, like you're taking out the trash, you're doing the dishes or something like that, it's not as fun. Like, so it's really, I try to keep it loose and like natural and stuff like that when my process, because I don't ever want to make it feel like it's a chore to me. And I don't think most musicians, I mean, there's, you know, everybody sort of has a different opinion, every artist and different process and the way they go about it. But, like, you know, you can tell pretty quickly if you're not having a great like day, it probably isn't the best time to make music, because I'm under the camp of I like to make like happy music, so for most often. So I don't really, if I'm in a negative mood or something like that, it's not the best time for me. But there's people that would argue that. They would say that you should make it you should kind of like work through those periods and make music that exactly reflects, you know, your negative emotions and stuff like that. But I'm just kind of not in that camp. So I would say that, you know, the short answer, yes, it does make me happy. The long answer, probably not. Like, it doesn't if I did it every single day. So so, I mean, you know, I would say that every day's different though. Like when I say that, like, you know, one day maybe I'm just tweaking a snare drum and that's it. And then I just leave the computer. Another day I'm like recording an entire verse or a chorus, or I'm having somebody in. So not every day is the same, but like, yeah, I think overall, I mean, I wouldn't be doing it for so long if I didn't get joy and happiness out of it. I mean, and you can't argue the money angle, because I'm not making any money off it really. So you can't say, oh, you know, it's like making you money. Of course that makes you happy. Like, this is a true answer. This is really like, you know, me saying I've started this in 8th grade and I'm still doing it. So clearly I'm coming back because it makes me happy, brings me joy. But I also like the angle of like collaboration, because I like making other people happy too. Like I like seeing artists that don't really have the ability to produce and like mix, and maybe if they were to go to a recording studio, it would be super expensive and blah, blah, blah. So like, it's really fulfilling for me to like, have artists come in, and do it for free and just kind of have fun with it, like, and not treat it like it's like, we're putting you on the time clock and, you've been in my studio for 4 hours. That means, you owe me $150 and stuff like that. Like, I don't ever really like, I think when you start getting too much money involved in it, and I understand some people take it as a business, but I think my music tends to would probably maybe deteriorate if my primary thought was like, oh, I need to make all this money off this music and stuff like that. So, I know I kind of went into a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, the short answer, yes, definitely makes me happy. But like anybody could, with inspiration, it's not, you can't just put it in a can and save it for tomorrow. It's either there or it's not in certain times. So I try to like catch it when it's at its highest and then just try to capture it. And I know a lot of artists would say the same, like if they catch a wave of inspiration and they come up with some really great lyrics, or they came up with a great melody, they like, what I tend to do is just, I record it into an iPhone really quick, because sometimes it's very fleeting. Like, 10 seconds later you could lose it. So stuff like that. So I try to incorporate it, like, and I work a business job. So it's not like, I'm just mulling around all day, like thinking about songs. I think it's a good balance to have an analytical job where you use one side of your brain, then kind of just relax and let loose on the music. So that's, that's long story short. That's what I'm rolling with.
Well, I think there are a lot of great things you said there. I mean, one part of it is you started doing this quite some time ago, and you're still at it. You stuck with it. And another aspect, or there's another kind of theme there, and that's, it's not always happy and joyful, and like, things you love and that you're passionate about, sometimes it comes in waves, and when you really care about it, as I can tell you do with your music, you'll have a spectrum of emotions that appear. And then another point of it is, there's a lot of ways to define value. It's not always just the financial benefit. It's not always just the personal fulfillment of it. It's not always just other people enjoying it. I mean, it's a kind of, value is defined in different ways and has different aspects to it. And if it's bringing some value to you in your life and you care about it, we got to promote more people in the world to pursue those things that they value and that they care about. So I think that was really great, having you here, sharing about your journey with music. And I just want to recap a few things. Again, my name's Michael Wehar. I'm here at Swarthmore College, broadcasting from WSRN 91.5 FM. And we have a special guest, Brian Adams. We're just wrapping it up, but we interviewed Brian. We heard 3 of his songs. It was really great music, and we heard about his journey with music. And I want to tie this together with what the station here at WSRN is doing. So we're a part of Swarthmore College. It's an educational institution, and there's a lot of creative people here at the college, and we hope that some of your journey, Brian, will inspire them. Some of them are really into music, especially the ones that are starting to broadcast in our station. And I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from this interview. And this radio station is very tied to interest in music. As far as I'm aware, there was even a collaboration with a local label at some point, and they have a stash in our station of original music that they published from some years ago. So we're still rediscovering this. This long history of the station. I think you were a great second guest, Brian. You're the second one I've interviewed here live on the air, and I'm just so glad to have you. I hope we can have you again. And I have a few more guests in the coming week or two. we do have a guest who has worked for some startups and new businesses and things like that. He's going to come in a week or so. And we have another guest who works in community and economic development. I'm very excited about that as well. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Brian. And
man,
this is great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike. This was, a treat. And the invite is open anytime you want, you want to have me on again. Feel free, it'll be great.